News Rundown with me, your host, Touring News. The IMF warns that the pandemic is set to undo a decade of progress in Africa. The International Monetary Fund sees the economy of sub Saharan Africa contracting by 3.2% in 2020, as the coronavirus pandemic could set back incomes in sub Saharan Africa by a decade due to weak oil prices, a tourism standstill, business lockdowns, and shrink the region's economy by 3.2%. Activity is expected to recover in 2021, but countries will first have to get through a year in which many see tepid growth at best, while those that rely on commodities or tourism will suffer severe declines. It is a worrisome picture, really, in terms of the economic outlook, and really reflects the continuing weak global economic environment that continues in the region face. Africa Director for the IMF, Adebe Amro Selassie, told Agence France Presse. Facebook sees a growing ad boycott in protest against the handling of speech. Civil rights groups have been pushing advertisers to pull spending, citing a failure to halt hate speech and misinformation. Ford, Clorox, Denny's are joining a parade of companies that have moved to halt advertising spending on Facebook because of how the social media giant has handled speech on its platform. Ford said Monday it will suspend its national social media advertising for 30 days as it reevaluates spending on sites. Restaurant chain Denny's said it is pausing paid advertising on Facebook starting on Wednesday. Clorox is pausing global ad spending on Facebook and Instagram through December. The move is to act against hate speech. In Los Angeles, an economy built on freelance crumbles. Creative workers with multiple gigs are among the worst hit by the recession and face long roads to recovery. Mostly that article is how it sounds to be, with a lot of people either being actors or being freelance workers or working in restaurants or bars and gyms. As the economy shuts down, so does the fragility that it was built upon. India bans TikTok and dozens of other Chinese apps after the border clash. India banned dozens of Chinese mobile apps, including widely used TikTok and WeChat, after a border clash between troops from the two countries left 20 Indian soldiers dead this month. Bill de Blasio agrees to cut NYPD funding by $1 billion. Police department's annual funding would drop to about $5 billion from $6 billion. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said he agreed to shift more than $1 billion in additional funding out of the New York Police Department as he and the City Council raced to agree on the city's budget for the coming fiscal year. At the press conference, de Blasio said he had also proposed to shift $500 million out of the NYPD's capital budget. The money instead would go toward improvement of youth centers and public housing. The city faces a deficit of around $9 billion over the next 2 years because of a decline in revenue after the new coronavirus. Amazon launches a space push to drive cloud computing growth, as the AWS's move comes during a multi-year surge in U.S. military and civilian agency spending on space projects. They're boosting their efforts to lure military and commercial space organizations as major users of the cloud computing services, hoping to benefit from a rising government spending and burgeoning private investment. Iran issues an arrest warrant for President Trump over the killing of the General Soleimani. Interpol was asked for assistance in detaining President Trump and 35 others over the killing of Major General Qasem Soleimani. As Palestinians prepare for annexation, it will be a disaster. Palestinian farmers been able to reclaim some of their land in Area C, but now they worry about their fate as Benjamin Netanyahu and the right-wing Israeli government try to take more and more of the land from the West Bank. Modi says India's coronavirus spread is at a critical juncture, and people are not taking the social distancing as seriously as they need to. Nepal families face hunger as coronavirus crisis hits remittances. More than 56% of Nepal's 5.4 million households affected as remittances drop due to global recession. As less people are sending money back to Nepal, their economy is stagnating, similar to what is happening in Lebanon. This is leading to a growing hunger crisis in Nepal, as well as in Lebanon. Scientists warn new virus in pigs has potential pandemic risk. G4 type descended from H1N1 has all the essential hallmarks of a candidate pandemic virus, Chinese scientists say. New flu virus found in pigs in China has become more infectious to humans and needs to be watched closely in case it becomes a potential pandemic virus. A team of Chinese researchers looked at influenza viruses found in pigs from 2011 to 2018 and found a G4 strain of H1N1 with all the essential hallmarks of a candidate pandemic virus, according to the paper, which was published in the U.S. journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, also known as PNAS or PNAS. Workers on pig farms showed elevated levels of the virus in their blood, the author said, adding that close monitoring in human populations, especially the workers in the swine industry, should be urgently implemented. India's first COVID-19 vaccine cleared for human trials. Drug Controller General of India approves Bharat Biotech's Covaxin for clinical human trials, which will start in July. Bharat Biotech's COVID-19 vaccine has been approved for human trials, making it India's first domestic candidate to get the green light from the government's drug regulator as cases surge in the country with more than 1.3 billion people. The Drug Controller General of India has approved the company's application to conduct Phase 1 and Phase 2 clinical trial of Covaxin, which was developed along with India Council of Medical Research's National Institute of Virology, the company said in a statement on Monday. 2 dead, 4 hospitalized after a gas leak in India pharmaceutical plant. Gas leak at pharmaceutical plant in Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh state, where similar accident killed 12 last month. 2 workers have been killed and 4 others sickened by a gas leak from a pharmaceutical plant in an Indian industrial city where another fatal gas leak occurred last month. Duterte presidency unravels as coronavirus ravages the Philippines. Analysts say the pandemic has exposed the president's militarist approach and lack of a serious policy agenda. It's been 4 years since Rodrigo Duterte took his oath as president of the Philippines, railing against the erosion of faith and trust in the government, while riding on a populist wave promising real change and transparency. But as he enters the last 2 years in office, his leadership has proven hollow, analysts have said, adding that his handling of the continuing coronavirus pandemic has exposed his lack of serious policy, leaving many Filipinos to fend for themselves, even as the economy faces its most serious challenges in decades. The United States is beginning to eliminate the Hong Kong special status. Mike Pompeo says the move to end defense exports is a response to Chinese efforts to eviscerate Hong Kong's freedoms. The United States began eliminating Hong Kong's special status under U.S. law on Monday, halting defense exports and restricting the territory's access to high-tech products as China prepares new Hong Kong security legislation. The United States moves come as top decision-making body of China Parliament deliberates a draft national security law for Hong Kong that pro-democracy activists in the city fear will be used to eliminate dissent and tighten Beijing's control. Spending down, savings up. How British shoppers dealt with the virus. Household spending plunged 2.7% in the first quarter, the most on record, as the economy shrank by 2.2%. Nominal household spending plunged by 2.7%, while the saving rate reached 8.6% last quarter. When savings go up and consumption goes down, this is one of the potentials that leads to debt deflation spirals, as goods have to be marked down in order to be sold at either a loss or less of a profit. This then leads to people defaulting on their debts, which leads to bankruptcies, which leads to job layoffs, which leads to less money in the economy. So the manufacturing sectors do not like when we save our money. In a show that I really enjoy, Cirque du Soleil files for bankruptcy protection. The Canadian Entertainment Group has been forced to close all its shows since the coronavirus outbreak began. Canada's Cirque du Soleil Entertainment Group filed for bankruptcy protection on Monday as COVID-19 pandemic forced the famed circus operator to cancel shows and lay off the artists. A very in-depth article from Al Jazeera about mapping and annexation that goes through the entire history of it. We are going to be covering this article in an in-depth piece at some point here on the channel. It is too long to do during a world news broadcast, but it's a very, very wonderfully done in-depth piece. In a repeat from an article yesterday as well, the $5 forests. There are many forests in Indonesia that are being purchased for $5 an acre in order to be burned down in order to have palm trees planted and harvested from. This is one of the things taking some of the lungs out of the earth, leading to greater climate change and exacerbating inequalities that are happening across the globe. Mapping America's underwater real estate from Bloomberg. What happens to home prices if flood maps start measuring climate change? Millions of Americans are about to find out. Millions of Americans just woke up in a flood zone that had never been before listed on U.S. government maps. The first ever public evaluation of flood risk for every property in the 48 contiguous states has found that federal maps underestimate the number of homes and businesses in significant danger by 67%. The new flood risk data released on Monday by the research and technology nonprofit First Street Foundation is virtually unprecedented disclosure of how much damage climate change can be expected to inflict at the level of individual homes. Under the new model, an additional 6 million properties are in jeopardy of flooding compared to government estimates, bringing the total to 14.6 million. The truth about flood risk can worsen American inequality. Bad flood scores mean less investment in low-income communities. First Street Foundation, the nonprofit agency, is making accurate climate change adjusted flood scores available for every U.S. property today. There are government-produced maps showing only 8.7 million homes and properties at significant flood risk. However, an additional 6 million has now been added. Trump tweets a video of the St. Louis couple aiming a gun at protesters. President Donald Trump on Monday retweeted a widely scrutinized video of a St. Louis couple aiming guns at a protest march. The couple stood in front of their home, both armed with guns, shouting back and forth with a march that included Black Lives Matter protesters, the St. Louis Dispatch reported. With no mask rules, TSA balances security risk with virus risk. The agency has updated its procedures for the pandemic, but it doesn't require passengers to wear masks. This sounds woefully unintelligent to me. Getting screened at the airport by the Transportation Security Administration is not a socially distant experience. Your electronics and shoes go right in the plastic bin, so forth. I don't understand why they wouldn't be trying to have people wear masks. Indebted governments may hold monetary policy hostage, the BIS warns. Central banks mustn't get strong-armed into keeping interest rates unduly low as they splurge on bonds to help governments finance crisis spending, said the Bank of International Settlements. The issue has come to the fore amid huge response to the fallout from the coronavirus. A large part of that has involved massive bond purchases to help governments fund support for their economies, which the BIS has said blurred the fine line between monetary and fiscal policy. A key risk is fiscal dominance, it said in a report on Tuesday. Absent effective fiscal consolidation and growth-oriented structural reforms, high debt burdens may generate pressure on monetary policy to keep interest rates low. Spain warned it will fall into the Italian trap without reforms. The Spanish central bank says the economy must boost potential growth. Spain risks long-term sluggish growth like Italy if lawmakers don't respond to the coronavirus crisis with major reforms to address long-standing weaknesses. Medium-term growth potential, only around 1% before the pandemic, is at risk of falling further with businesses near collapse and some sectors facing weak demand for years. In this context, it is absolutely imperative to put in place measures that compensate for the damage triggered by the crisis in order to increase growth potential, Bank of Spain chief economist Oscar Arce said. China's pork prices are on the rise again. Concerns in China over re-emerging outbreaks of a deadly swine disease at a time when pork imports are expected to slide have pushed prices of the meat to their highest level in 2 months. Wholesale pork prices jumped 5.1% last week, the biggest such gain in about 8 months, according to new data published by the Commerce Ministry. The meat is now trading at 43.4 yuan, or 6.14 per kilogram, the highest since April. This would equate to around $3 per pound in the United States. In a repeat of the earlier article, the swine flu infecting humans raises fears of the pandemic potential. A strain of flu virus spreading in Chinese pigs has shown it can also infect humans, suggesting that another pathogen with pandemic potential waits in the wings behind the coronavirus. Samsung Heavy Bloom Energy partnered to develop zero-emissions cargo vessels. Using Bloom's fuel cell technology, the company plans to build eco-friendly vessels that carry liquefied natural gas. Samsung Heavy Industry Co. and Bloom Energy have announced an agreement to develop cleaner power for ships by jointly designing fuel cell-powered vehicles that will reduce carbon emissions and help improve air quality. The plan is to initially develop eco-friendly vessels that carry liquefied natural gas and will be among the first in the industry. The partners could work eventually to develop this type of power for container ships and tankers. European Union's Hogan sees turbulent period ahead of US-EU trade front. European Trade Commissioner Phil Hogan said he expects the transatlantic trade relationship will hit a rough patch that could soon result in higher tariffs on US and European goods. Judging by the signals coming out of the United States administration in recent days, I think we could have a turbulent period ahead in the context of the US election, Hogan said Tuesday during a webinar in Brussels. I don't see good positive signals from President Trump in recent days about threatening more tariffs on European products. Last week, the United States floated the idea of imposing new tariffs on $3.1 billion of tariffs of European exports, including olives, beer, gin, and trucks, in retaliation for Brussels' illegal subsidies to curb Airbus. Supreme Court orders the restructuring of the Consumer Finance Watchdog. High Court rules Consumer Financial Protection Bureau single director setup is too independent from the president. The Supreme Court ordered changes to a government consumer finance watchdog created in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, capping a 10-year battle over the agency by ruling its structure was unconstitutional because the director held too much unchecked power. To address the problem, the court held that the president can remove the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for any reason. The court rejected broader legal arguments that it should strike down the bureau, which was designed to protect consumers from abusive financial industry practices on products like mortgages, student loans, and credit cards altogether. The CFPB has been politically polarizing since the inception, when President Obama tapped then Harvard law professor Elizabeth Warren to set it up. Democrats have wanted a muscular CFPB to take on what they saw as finance industry excesses. Republicans in Wall Street have criticized the Bureau as an instrument of runaway government regulation with too much power over a significant slice of the economy. In a 5-4 ruling along ideological lines, the court said Congress overstepped constitutional boundaries in 2010 when it created the CFPB and placed it under the control of a single director who was insulated from the White House's political direction. Wave of corporate failure stays at bay for now. Some on Wall Street are starting to wonder if the anticipated crush of corporate failures will ever arrive. The tidal wave of corporate failures that in April seemed poised to come crashing down has yet to materialize, and some on Wall Street are starting to wonder if it ever will. The coronavirus crisis dealt an unquestionable blow to U.S. companies. Stay-at-home orders and the rout in oil markets have led to a significant uptick in defaults and bankruptcies, from retailers such as JCPenney and Neiman Marcus to car rental company Hertz, as well as Chesapeake Bay Energy yesterday. For the most part, however, the companies that have succumbed were already heavily indebted, and the industries that were declining before the pandemic, the loss of revenue during the economic shutdown, tipped them over the edge. I don't entirely agree with this article. I do think that there are going to be more corporate bankruptcies coming to the fore. America's business leaders once bragged about how well they looked after their employees and how much they contributed to society in taxes. But in recent decades, as the U.S. economy expanded and CEO salaries skyrocketed, workers have been left behind. From the New York Times, Trump got written briefing in February on possible Russian bounties, officials say. The investigation into Russia's suspected operation is said to focus in part on the killings of 3 Marines in a truck bombing last year. American officials provided a written briefing in late February to President Trump, laying out their conclusion that a Russian military intelligence unit offered and paid bounties to Taliban-linked militants to kill United States and coalition troops in Afghanistan, 2 officials familiar with the matter said. The investigation into the suspected Russian covert operation to incentivize such killings has focused in part on an April 2019 car bombing that killed 3 Marines as one such potential attack, according to multiple officials with the matter. The new information emerges the White House tried on Monday to play down the intelligence assessment that Russia sought to encourage and reward killings, including reiterating a claim that Mr. Trump was never briefed about the matter and portraying the conclusion as disputed and dubious. But that stance clashed with the disclosure by 2 officials that the intelligence was included months ago in Mr. Trump's presidential daily brief document, a compilation of the government's latest secrets and best insights about foreign policy and national security that is prepared for him to read. One of the officials said the item appeared in Mr. Trump's brief in late February. The other cited February 27th specifically. Moreover, a description of the intelligence assessment that the Russian unit had carried out the bounties plot was also seen as serious and solid enough to disseminate more broadly across the intelligence community in a May 4th article in the CIA's World Intelligence Review, a classified compendium commonly referred to as The Wire, 2 officials said. Alarmed by the Sunbelt spike, New York and New Jersey reconsider the pace of reopening. The New Jersey governor postponed plans to allow indoor dining this week, and New York officials are considering a similar pause. The governors of New York and New Jersey said on Monday that they were so alarmed by a surge in coronavirus cases in the South and the West that they were reconsidering plans to allow indoor dining in the 2 states in the coming days. Governor Philip Murphy of Jersey said the plans to allow indoor dining to resume on Thursday would be postponed indefinitely. We have seen spikes in other states driven in part by the return of patrons to indoor dining establishments where they are seated without face coverings for significant periods of time. We do not wish to see New Jersey experience a similar spike. New York City has been scheduled to enter Phase 3 of its reopening on July 6th, which would have allowed restaurants and other establishments to serve patrons indoors if they cut their capacity in half and followed various other restrictions. Indoor dining is already allowed in the rest of the state under the restrictions, but at a news conference yesterday, Monday, June 29th, Governor Andrew Cuomo said the officials were now considering whether indoor dining could restart safely in the city and that he would make a decision on Wednesday. The announcement by the governor stunned restaurant owners whose businesses have been decimated by the pandemic. Many restaurants have been preparing to reopen by expanding their staffs and increasing inventory as they struggle to recover financially. China passes the security law giving it sweeping powers over Hong Kong. The law, approved in Beijing with speed and secrecy and signed off by Xi Jinping, will tighten the Communist Party's grip on Hong Kong after last year's protests. China passed a contentious new law for Hong Kong on Tuesday that would empower the authorities to crack down on opposition to Beijing, risking deeper rifts with Western governments that have warned about the erosion of freedoms in the territory. The law's swift approval in Beijing signaled the urgency that the Communist Party leader Xi Jinping has given to expand control in Hong Kong after the territory was convulsed by pro-democracy protests last year. Details of the law have not been disclosed as of Tuesday evening, and we will continue to keep you updated here on the channel. The law underscores Beijing's resolve to achieve a political sea of change in Hong Kong, a former British colony with its own legal system and civil liberties unseen in mainland China. It could also be used to stifle protests like those last year that evolved into an increasingly confrontational challenge to Chinese rule. The United States halts high-tech exports to Hong Kong over security concerns. The Trump administration's new restrictions come in response to a new national security law that extends China's influence over Hong Kong. The Trump administration placed new restrictions on U.S. exports of defense equipment and certain high-tech products to Hong Kong on Monday in response to the new Chinese law. Even the South Pole is warming, and quickly, scientists say. Surface air temperatures at the bottom of the world have risen 3 times faster than the global average since the 1990s. The South Pole, the most isolated part of the planet, is also one of the most rapidly warming ones, scientists said Monday, with surface air temperatures rising since the 1990s at a rate that is 3 times faster than the global average. While the warming could be the result of natural climate change alone, the researchers said it is likely that the effects of human-caused warming contributed to it. The pole, home to the United States research base and the high icy emptiness of the Antarctic interior, warmed by about 0.6 degrees Celsius or 1.1 degrees Fahrenheit per decade over the past 30 years. The global average over that time was 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade. Although parts of coastal Antarctica are losing ice, which contributes to sea level rise, the pole is no longer in danger of melting, as the year-round average temperature is still around minus 50 degrees Celsius. Reddit, acting against hate speech, bans the_Donald subreddit. The influential pro-Trump community broke the rules on harassment and targeting, said Reddit, which also banned other groups. Reddit, one of the largest social networking and message board websites, on Monday banned its biggest community devoted to President Trump as an overhaul of its hate speech policies. The community, or subreddit called The Donald, is home to more than 790,000 users who post memes, viral videos, and supportive messages about Mr. Trump. Reddit executives said the group, which has been highly influential in cultivating and stoking Mr. Trump's online base, had consistently broken its rules by allowing people to target and harass others with hate speech. Reddit is a place for community and belonging, not for attacking people, Steve Huffman, the company's chief executive, said in a call with reporters. That Donald has been in violation of that. Reddit said it was also banning roughly 2,000 other communities from across the political spectrum, including one devoted to the leftist podcast group Chapo Trap House, which has about 160,000 regular users. The vast majority of the forums that are being banned are inactive. Twitch suspended Trump's channel for hateful conduct. The action appeared to be the first outright suspension of one of the president's social media accounts. Twitch, the live streaming platform, said on Monday that it was suspending President Trump's channel for hateful conduct in what appeared to be the first deliberate suspension of one of Mr. Trump's social media accounts. The site, which is owned by Amazon, said 2 recent streams on Mr. Trump's channel violated its rules. One stream was of a rebroadcasted 2015 campaign event in which Mr. Trump made comments about Mexico sending drugs, crime, and rapists over the border. The other was of his recent rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he talked about a very tough hombre breaking into a woman's house at 1 a.m. Hateful conduct is not allowed on Twitch, a Twitch spokesman said in a statement. In line with our policies, President Trump's channel has been issued a temporary suspension from Twitch for comments made on stream, and the offending content has been removed. It was unclear how long the suspension would last. In a blog post from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, update on misclassification that affected the unemployment rate, they are claiming it is incredibly hard in order to determine what the actual rate of unemployment is in the United States, and this is coming from the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Las Vegas workers sue casinos over COVID-19 safety. Owners of Harrah's MGM Grand didn't adequately protect employees for getting sick, the lawsuit says. Las Vegas Strip hospitality workers filed a lawsuit against casino operators on Monday, accusing the companies of failing to protect employees from COVID-19. One of the first efforts to hold employers legally responsible for infections as cases in the United States surge. The lawsuit, filed in the U.S. District Court in Las Vegas against the owners of Harrah's, MGM Grand, and Bellagio casinos, says the companies didn't immediately shut down food and beverage outlets and other areas after learning of positive cases, didn't immediately inform employees when coworkers tested positive, and didn't adequately contact trace before allowing colleagues of infected employees to return to the job. Culinary Union 226 and Bartenders Union Local 165, through their joint bargaining agency, filed the lawsuit against Harrah's Las Vegas, a subsidiary of Caesars Entertainment Corp., and the Signature Condominiums LLC at the MGM Grand and Bellagio LLC subsidiaries of MGM Resorts International. The lawsuit said unsafe working conditions violate the union's contract, and the union represents 60,000 hospitality workers. If you're enjoying the content so far today, please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment down below, and you can come find me live on my channel at twitch.tv/touringnews or on YouTube at touringnews1. A question has been posed to the Chicago Booth IGM forum on the new visa ban. Question A: even if it is temporary, the ban on visas for skilled workers, including researchers, will weaken U.S. leadership in STEM and R&D. And there were 51% that strongly agreed, 47% that agreed, taking the total to 96% of people that agree that even if the ban is temporary, the ban on visas for skilled workers, including researchers, will weaken U.S. leadership in STEM and R&D. Virus testing shortfalls cause lines to build in hard-hit states. Football stadiums in Texas can't accommodate the demand, as a surge in COVID-19 cases prompt states to reconsider the opening. The U.S. again is grappling with a shortfall of testing that has hobbled the nation since the pandemic's early weeks, and now threatens to further undermine containment efforts at a crucial moment. In new hotspots like Arizona, Texas, and Florida, where COVID-19 is rapidly spreading, lines for testing extend outside of urgent care offices and other sites. 2 high school football stadiums in Houston regularly hit capacity by mid-morning and have to turn people away. The country's largest labs are forecasting a surge in demand that could lead to longer waits for test results, and have warned that limited amounts of critical testing supplies could become a constraint. Though capacity has expanded, widespread testing remains elusive, in part due to persistent supply shortages. We are still grossly inadequate. We're so far behind, said Howard Foreman, director of the Yale School of Public Health Healthcare Management Program. We still have a supply issue, and then we had a demand issue. You have both issues playing out. At the federal, state, and local level, you need both of these things addressed. Contact tracing apps aren't the technology panacea people hoped. High hopes that technology would help supplement the traditional labor-intensive approach to contact tracing have been dashed. As COVID-19 spread, sending almost every country into some form of lockdown, governments began to wonder how best to track the virus. Contact tracing apps seemed a sensible solution, but everywhere you look, tech has failed to deliver. In France, less than 3% of the population has downloaded Stop COVID. The UK missed an initial rollout, and a majority of these tracing apps are probably an invasion on our civil liberties and civil rights, and we probably shouldn't really be downloading these apps. German officials were so alarmed by President Trump's conversation with Angela Merkel that they took extra steps to make sure they stayed secret, according to a CNN report. President Trump's phone conversations with Merkel were so unusual that German officials were prompted to keep them under wraps, according to Carl Bernstein. Sources told CNN that Trump disparaged Merkel in a very aggressive manner, calling her stupid and accusing her of being in the pocket of Russians. He's toughest in the phone calls with those he looks on as weaklings, and the weakest with the ones that he ought to be tough with. German officials were... Some of the things he said to Merkel are just unbelievable. He called her stupid and accused her of being in the pocket of the Russians. Food banks are anticipating a second wave of demand when the extra $600 in unemployment benefits expires next month. In a few months here in Pennsylvania, the United States, there were some food banks that were experiencing lines of up to 3 to 5 miles for people to go to the food banks. Now that is expected to return. Donald Trump's white power retweet set off a 5-alarm fire in the White House on Sunday morning after he retweeted a video of one of his supporters saying white power, according to 2 White House officials. The video remained on the president's Twitter page, where he had 82 million followers for more than 3 hours because they could not reach him to ask him to delete it. The president was at his golf club in Virginia and put his phone down. Masks protect everyone from the coronavirus, including you. The practice of wearing masks to prevent the spread of COVID-19 has become an incredibly sensitive topic. While some state and local authorities mandate it, others don't. Couple the fact that early advice about mask wearing stressed the importance of wearing one to protect others, the people are incredibly confused. The CDC recently updated considerations for wearing a face mask and doubled down on its recommendations that people wear cloth face coverings in public settings when they're around people outside of their home, especially when it's hard to maintain social distancing. Cloth face coverings are recommended as a simple barrier to prevent respiratory droplets from traveling into the air and onto other people when the person wearing the cloth face covering sneezes, talks, or raises their voice. This is called source control. This recommendation is based on what we know about the role respiratory droplets play in the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19, paired with emerging evidence from clinical and laboratory studies that show cloth face coverings reduce the spray of droplets when worn over the nose. In my city, in Philadelphia, we are required to wear face masks in going into any indoor areas. House passes new coronavirus relief bill for renters and homeowners as Democrats urge Republicans to negotiate further aid. The bill, sponsored by Representative Maxine Waters, passed a vote of 232 to 180, split down party lines. Only one Democrat, Kurt Schrader, of Oregon voted against the measure. The bill allocates $100 billion toward emergency rental assistance, establishes a $75 billion for homeowners, and extends an eviction and foreclosure moratorium as it now heads to the Senate. Amazon is announcing a $500 million quote-unquote thank you bonus to their employees, as full-time frontline workers at Amazon and Whole Foods, as well as drivers for the company's delivery partners, will receive a $500 bonus. Part-time employees will receive a $250 bonus. From the Associated Press, China cuts Uyghur birth with IUDs, abortion, and sterilization. Chinese government is taking on draconian measures to slash birth rates among Uyghurs and other minorities as part of a sweeping campaign to curb its Muslim population, even as it encourages some of the country's Han majority to have more children. While individual women have spoke out before about forced birth control, the practice is far more widespread and systematic than previously known, according to the AP investigation, based on government statistics, state documents, and interviews with 30 ex-detainees, family members, and a former detention camp instructor. The campaign over the past 4 years in the far west region of Xinjiang is leading to what some experts are calling a form of demographic genocide. What America asks of working parents is impossible. More and more, the goals of being a dedicated employee and being a dedicated parent seem to be in conflict. If managing the demands of working and parenting in the 21st century feels impossible, Christine M. Beckman and Melissa Mesmanian argue that's because the ideals that many working parents subscribe to are impossible to fulfill. This would mean that you're driving too far to work, working too much, spending too much money paying your bills, and then you don't have enough money to be a good parent to your children. That is going to be the end of the broadcast for today, June 30th, on the World News Wrap. I was your host, Touring News. If you liked this type of content, there will be more of it to follow. You can find me at twitch.tv/Touring News, on YouTube at Touring News, on Twitter at Touring News 1. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much for tuning into the video.